Hey Zwifters, welcome to No Breakaways, your source for all the Zwift racing tips and tricks. I'm your host, Rick Wanger. Every week we're going to be breaking down two videos, one from an amateur and one from a pro. We're going to talk about what they did right, what they did wrong, and how they can improve so that you can be a better Zwift racer. This week I'm very excited. Our amateur is Dave Shaffron and our pro is 2018 Zwift USA National Champion, Adam Zimmerman. What's going on, guys?
Hey Rick, thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. So, without further ado, let's just go ahead and get to the videos. All right, so first up, we have Dave Shaffron. Just a little background info on him. 5'11", 172. He is a Cat A racer. He's 40 years old. Tax Neo, Giant Defy. He's a high school guidance counselor. Some of his notable accomplishments: he ran D3 cross and track at North Central. Former head boys cross country coach at Niles. He's big into all sorts of different fitness activities. I know for a while he was one of the elite stair climb racers in the country. All right, let's get right into it. So first, your race is on the Volcano Circuit map. So pretty flat, crit style, one of the 3R races. A little bit of a rise there that we're going to go over. But that's about it. Anything you guys wanted to say about it?
Yeah, sure. I can just say really quick, Volcano Circuit, whether you do it in reverse or forward, it's a fast crit course. I know this course well because we had to do it every week for like 2 or 3 months for the live e-crit back in 2018. No matter which way you do it, there's a short punchy climb on it, and that always finishes in the last kilometer. So that's definitely one of the key places that you should be looking at on that course.
So what we're doing here, we're looking at the start of his race. So we're starting off about 45 seconds into it. This is the hill going up to get to the circuit right after the start. So there's Dave in the dirt jersey. He's on the dirt team. So Adam, what do you think here? He's putting out about 4.6 watts per kilogram, kind of mid front of the pack. Is that where you want to see somebody?
Lots of people like to start off differently in the beginning of races. I used to start off where I was going like right from the beginning, hard, top 10 until everything settled in. Now I have a little bit more of a conservative approach where I sit back and I see what's going on. Pretty much nobody's going to get away in the first 5 to 10 minutes of any race unless it's a major mountain hill climb. So your best bet is just to get somewhere in the middle of the pack, sit in, and try to keep that heart rate down as low as possible.
So, I mean, are you worried about conserving every single watt you can at the start to give back sometime later in the race?
I wouldn't say I'm worried. You should never really be worried during a race because that just adds extra stress on you. You know, if anything, you need to be really, really relaxed in the beginning. So actually, it's funny having a certain playlist in the beginning of a race. So I would say if a race hypothetically is an hour long, I actually have a half an hour playlist for the beginning and the end of races for that reason, right? Because I want to stay as relaxed as possible. Obviously, you want to save every watt that you can. But the biggest thing is just staying relaxed, staying composed, and just like going along for the ride for the first, couple of laps, at least on this course.
One of my characteristics is I think I get like, I still don't have this, like, I don't know whether you call it confidence or something else, or that like kind of relaxed nature to just hang back there. Like I'm always like, I always feel like if I'm not within like the top 10, I'm not in the race. So I'm trying to get more comfortable with being in 40th place and being completely happy with that, knowing that a top 10 finish is still really, really close.
Sure. And, I would say that when I started racing on Zwift, I was probably the same way. I don't really like to compare Zwift to outside racing, but when it comes to Zwift, you can plow straight through people, right? So you can take a bit of a more relaxed approach, especially on these kind of flat roads, right? It's pretty easy just to sit back and kind of let the race unfold in front of you instead of always having to be a factor, because Zwift racing takes so much concentration. You're constantly looking at the screen to the right. You're looking at the screen in front of you. You're looking at your heart rate and power on the left, right? So there's so much information coming at you all together that you really don't want to add any extra stress by putting yourself into the top 10, unless you have a specific job on your team or something like that. I would say if there's a smaller group, let's say if there are 25 riders and it's a flat course, you could put yourself closer to the front. But I would say, you know, in a big pack of 50 riders, you're
Mhm.
just you're wasting a little bit more energy. And even if that wasn't the case, I would say that it's more of just a mental stress that you just don't need at that point.
Next little clip we have, this is the on lap one, coming to the finish line banner. There's a little bit of some rises, and I notice this is a place when I race, at least, that a lot of people get strung out. So let's go through it. And I mean, I've noticed, especially in the bigger races that I've been in, people will try to make moves here and maybe break apart packs. I mean, is that something that you've seen happen, Adam, where people can't get back on terms?
Yeah, you know, most races on Zwift, aside from the major climbs, are just pure attrition, right? Just hanging in, while guys get shredded off the back. Um, you know, this finish. There's a slight rise as you go into the volcano, and but you have to be careful because you're doing the lap over and over again. It's more of just general leg fatigue that you're going to have on that kind of like little small punchy climb. So you have to be weary of that. I normally put myself into the top 20 in a field this size on a punchy climb, and then I just kind of sit back after that and relax.
We're going to talk a little bit about pack positioning here. This is just, you know, the majority of this course is really flat. If you want to make sure you're staying in good position, especially for those of us who, you know, have a little bit lower FTPs, we got to try to save these watts on the back of this pack. So maybe walk us through this a little bit, Dave.
Heart rate's down at a real comfortable level. 260 watts is my FTP. I get this race. My FTP was, I think, right around 330. So the pace right here is comfortable, but I know though that as I'm coming up for this climb, I've been like conditioned to think that every single little climb is a spot where someone's going to make a hard breakaway. So now as I'm approaching this, I'm like kind of mentally gearing myself up to just step on the gas just a little bit harder. And I think you'll see, I don't know if I get into the red here, but I probably will go from 39th here, probably close to, I don't know what, top 15 or so. Whatever it is, it's more than I have to put out. But again, yeah, that just goes back to this, like having this like mentality that every single small climb is a spot where the whole pack could break away. And then if then I do find myself in this breakaway and I think, all right, yes, we did it. Then all of a sudden, 20 seconds later, this whole pack joins us again. I'm like, damn, you know, why did I put myself out there like that? I could have held back with all these guys.
So, you know, here's what I'm thinking on this course. It's very uncommon for a break to stick on this course. And even if there were 2 or 3 guys off the front right now, I honestly wouldn't be worried about them because the majority of the time, everybody's going to hit the hill hard and it's going to bring back those couple of seconds. If they get more than 15, 20 seconds, that's when I start putting myself near the front. And sometimes what that does is that if people constantly see you near the front, they're like, oh, maybe he's going to do something, right? So, or what I'll do is sometimes do a fake attack where I'll just put some orange numbers out for like a couple seconds. And then all of a sudden 2 or 3 guys attack and then they bring back the break, right? So that's one tactic you can do if you're really worried about a few guys staying away. But for the most part, on a flat course like this, what I'm doing is I'm sitting in, I'm relaxing, I'm listening to my music, and I'm just going along for the ride. I'm not all I'm thinking about is that every single lap is a dress rehearsal for the finish. So I am focused on the last 2K and almost nothing else the entire race, believe it or not. All I'm thinking is every time we go by, okay, look at these points, Adam, look at these points. What are you going to do here? Now, of course, knowing your field and knowing the riders you go against is a big help too, right? Because you know who's going to fizzle out, who's a really good sprinter. But even if you went into this blind and you didn't know anybody, all you need to do is make sure that you're close to the front. And going back to what you were saying, because I understand that you are having a bit of a fear that a breakaway is going to go away and you're going to miss the break, or you get in a break and then it gets pulled back. Never feel like you shouldn't make the break. If it's 2 guys off the front and they're not really pulling at a high watts per kilo, then I wouldn't even go for it. But if you see like 5 to 8 guys and you see them really going at a high watts per kilo for your race, then you say, okay, this might be worth it. It's worth it to go into it, right? That doesn't always mean everybody behind is sitting in pretty and feeling good. a lot of them can be just barely holding on and like, oh man, if you guys want to pull the brake back, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, they caught him, thank God. You know, that's what a lot of people are thinking, believe it or not. It's like, okay, I really hope they catch him. I'm just going to sit in, you know. But what it does is that if you constantly put yourself into breakaway situations or near the front when things are starting to ramp up, you get that confidence and you get that mentality and you're like, hey, I belong here. You know, it was really funny. When I was racing pro crits, you know, years ago, one of my best friends who got me into racing, I remember at the start of a pro Cat 1 crit, we're sitting there together and he could see I was so nervous. And he said, Adam, what's up? I just said, I'm just so nervous about this race. I don't know what to do. He said, Adam, just go near the front and act like you're supposed to be there. And it was the best advice, and it stayed with me over the years. It's just make it in your mind that you're supposed to be up front. And once you start believing it, everybody else around you starts believing it, whether it's virtual or not.
I like that dress rehearsal for the last 2K. And that's something which, like, as I do that, like one thing I like to do is as I get into that final climb, I think like I check to see how many seconds it takes us to get from like the climb to the finish. So that way I know in my head kind of how long I think it'll take me to sprint that. So then it just kind of helps with my shifting and with my effort too.
What I would suggest is don't worry about that so much, but focus more on 0.3 to go and who's attacking. So that's all I'm watching. I'm watching the orange numbers near me, and I'm watching how much distance there is. And if nobody's attacking and it comes to a certain distance, that's a light switch in my head. I go 100% right there. But if it's too early and it's really, really strung out, then it's kind of that tunnel vision where you're just hanging on. Okay, now I can go, you know. But if you try to count the seconds, sometimes that can be deceiving because the courses can be a little off. Every speed of every race is different, you know. But distance is always going to be true, right?
Yeah. So then, so you're paying really close attention to those numbers on the right-hand side, and when those things hit orange, you're taking off with them.
Correct. Always.
Yeah.
Even if it's in the middle of a race. Right.
That's my other issue too, is that like I'm not paying enough attention because I guess, you know, you're fatigued, you're concentrating on when you want to attack. I could do better at being more responsive to the attacks around me.
Yeah, I would say in a big field of 40 plus, you really don't need to attack. It's just you're just not going to go anywhere. The blob always rules in that sense. But and we're not talking about the finish yet. Just in the middle of the race, if I see tons of orange numbers, I'm putting myself right into the top 15. This way, that if let's say there is a gap of 5 seconds, I don't have to shut that down and burn all these matches because I'm already in it. You know, that's the big thing. The biggest thing is you don't want to miss a split. And if a big break goes and they're motivated, you want to be with it. But for most of these races, I assume they're going to come down to a field sprint on this course.
Next one, this is kind of just a continuation of what we were just watching, going into the little rise. And want to talk about positioning, want to talk about how hard you need to go, kind of just continuing what we were just speaking about. So, Dave, what are you thinking right here?
All right, so climbing up, what am I? So there I am, 500. So peaking out right around almost 550 or so. Yeah, this is again where I'm thinking that some sort of split is going to happen. So here I am in 16th place, where I was probably in 38th at the base. And then see, this is where my head is all of a sudden thinking, oh my gosh, I got to get these guys. So now I'm 8th. And then I'm probably thinking, okay, we did it. We're going to get a break going. And then I'm sure within 45 seconds, the whole pack's going to catch up again and I'll be back in 38th again. But I've burnt a match or two.
Yeah, I could see it too. So what you're doing is you either have to commit to being in those top 5 guys from the beginning of this climb, or just sit back in the field and let them chase them down. You're kind of in no man's land there, right? So halfway up this hill, you're now starting to go, once they make the left here, all of a
Mhm.
sudden they're strung out. There's like maybe a 50-meter gap or something, and you start shutting it down to them. And then, like you said, you got into 8th place. But it was just extra energy you just didn't need to be using at that
Mhm.
point. I would
Yeah.
have either been in 3rd place right now, or I would have been in 15th or 20th. You see what
Yeah.
I'm saying?
Yeah.
Let
Yeah.
all these other guys do the work, Now
Mhm.
it does look a little promising right here for a couple of seconds because they do have a little bit of a gap, but there's so many other guys around you. I would just let them do the work. There's no
Mhm.
reason to just bust through everybody
Yeah.
like you did, because right away what's going to happen is everybody else is
Yeah.
going to catch, because there's a 0-second gap
Yeah.
from anybody behind you right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I really like that advice too, from the standpoint of like, either way you look, if you're way up front or you're sitting in the pack, you aren't doing that much work. But kind of what Dave did was like the maximum amount of work for the minimum amount of gain.
Mhm.
Right.
So
Yes.
Like if you're going to commit
really
to
good
that,
advice.
if you're going to commit to those top 5 guys and you really want to get something going, then get up there and do something with it. If not,
Mhm.
sit back and chill. Otherwise you're just burning matches in between everybody, just closing down people, moving around people like you don't need to.
Mhm.
All right, so the last clip we have here is, this is kind of the long run into the finish for Dave. Yeah, maybe Dave, what are you thinking right here?
This is where, like, I think every time I get into a sprint, it's always kind of like a guessing game, and I don't feel myself strategically putting myself in a position. I feel myself hoping I get lucky to be in a right position. But to be honest, I don't always know what that exact position is. So I assume, I'm like, well, let's see, I know I don't want to be in front. I know that. And I know I don't want to be in, too far back. So I'm like, okay, I guess somewhere off the middle, somewhere maybe around 6th, 7th, 8th place. Then I could respond to some attacks that are going and hope to like catch a wheel of someone sprinting and then slingshot around them in the last 50 meters. But
Are we coming into the finish right now, or?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Let
Yeah,
me
this
just
is
watch.
going to
Yeah,
be
I gotta
going
watch it.
into there,
okay.
up to the rises, into the finish.
So tell me what you're feeling right now.
Okay. All right. So now, this is like a little climb, and now there's one more little climb. So I remember thinking here, like, all right, now I got to go all out right here. Yep. And now I want to downshift, I think 1, and then get out of the saddle again. I should be getting out. I should be, oh gosh, yeah, there I go. 950 or almost 950 right there. So, so yeah, I was timing my sprint primarily just on that first little rise, and making sure that I
You can
was
kind
in
of
the
see
right
here.
gear.
You can kind of see here, people are starting to get away, and they never come back to them.
Yeah. So the race was over right here. So you're sitting too far back. If guys are in orange numbers and it's a K1/2 to go, you're out of the picture, right? So if you go back to the beginning, and that's okay. I mean, so if you go back to the beginning again.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. So right here, you're a little too far back because I would be in the middle of that group coming into this finish. Okay.
Okay.
So that's the first thing you want to do. You got to put yourself up near the front. You have to see what's going on near the front. Otherwise, you can't tell. All right, boom, right away. 2 guys are off the front. Now there's no orange numbers yet. Now there's 2 guys bridging. So I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guys, and they're stringing it out. Now that pack is already gone. The chances you would have to burn a serious match right here just to get back to them. Now let's say that 2 of those guys out of those 5, I can't tell how many are there, fizzle out, right? You still got 2 or 3 left up there, right? Like just happened. So right here, okay, it comes back together. But the thing is, you would have burnt a match if you weren't there. Like you were burning a match trying to get through the big pack to get to the small pack. Okay.
Yeah.
Now as we come into the rise here, this is a good position. 5th place, perfect. Right here. But you see what happens? Orange numbers. 1, 2,
Yeah.
3
Look at
guys,
mine.
7.8.
Yeah.
I would have went with them. That's your lead out
So
right
you'd be
there.
trying to, you're trying to go up to those 2, Adam.
Yeah, as soon as I saw their orange numbers, that should be a light switch in my head. Okay, you got to get on this. Now you see these other 2 guys are worried. So you see these two guys going off the front here, they're worried. They're like, oh, they see the move, and they're like, oh man, we missed that move, and now they're on orange numbers. And they did the smart thing because they bridged. But now what you're doing is you're just shutting it down on one guy, and then you let go right here. You kind of let go in your sprint, and you went back to like not into orange numbers. And now you have this huge burst to 900 watts, but it's way too late. It's way too late. So what you need to do is you need to be looking at the riders who are up front. You need to be looking at the orange numbers. If they make a move, you have to go with it. Even if it settles down and you get a swarm again, you just surge right again to the front, right? But what happened is, you started to sprint a little too late. I would have started sprinting as soon as it rised up in the volcano, even if I was that far back, because you might have caught one or two guys that way. But when you start your sprint that late and it's already that strung out, now that would have been great if like the guys were with you you were in first place, right? Because you made a move here. But even now, like right now, I would be in orange numbers, and you're not until you get to this rise right here, and that's where I would have been in orange numbers way before that. Okay. So a few tactical errors there. Your sprint looks pretty solid, actually. Your sprint looks really strong. But I think that it's your positioning that's a bit off in the final kilometers. I would say you're just from looking at that one clip, your sprint is strong, but it's just not maybe having the confidence to go up front with those guys so early on in the final K.
All right. Well, we took a little break. You can see we all changed clothes. Adam even changed where he was sitting at. So we're good to go. Let's get straight into our 3 key takeaways. All right. Number 1. Know the course and how the races normally play out. This one can be obvious, but also, it's really easy to get caught out on a course that you don't even know or that you do know really well. Number 2, either be in the break or wait in the pack. Adam, do you want to chime in at all on that?
Yeah, it just means don't be in no man's land. And when you decide whether you're going to stay in the pack or be in the break, that has to be like a light switch decision, where it's either I'm committing, I'm going in the break, or I'm going to sit in the pack. But if you start chasing down the break and burning matches, it's going to come back to you later.
And number 3, start your sprint at a given distance or marker when the others start popping big numbers. And Dave, I'll actually ask you to talk a little bit about this because since we last recorded, you've kind of put this advice into practice.
Yeah, right. So I've got both scenarios where this happened. So in a race where I think we were sprinting on Tempest Fugit in the last 500 kilometer straightaway, there was I was thinking exactly about this number 3 takeaway, and was just looking over at my right-hand screen numbers. And as soon as I saw all those orange numbers go off, I just started going nuts with the sprint. And that was able, and I think that was able to allow me to get just enough jump on there to be in that top speed breakaway. At the time, I can't remember what place I ended up getting, but I remember after the race feeling so good about the way that I executed that. And then there was another race since we've last met where it was the opposite. We got to a point where I think we were about 250 meters out, and I was in the front, but I just went because I knew that was where I wanted to, and that's where I knew that I think I had my strength. And I know in that race I ended up finishing second. So, and again, I felt great about the way that it was played out.
Yeah, so that's awesome. Really actionable advice that Adam gave, and you can look at Dave's last race in Zwift Power here at end of September, and you can see that improving his race rating. All right, so our pro Adam Zimmerman, 2018 Zwift National Champion, like I talked about, 5'5", the svelte 127, 37 years old, obviously A+. He's riding on a Wahoo kicker. He's a cycling coach and full-time dad. 2018 Zwift CVR World Cup LA overall winner. 2019 Zwift All-Stars, second place in the Zwift eCrit Live Final. Outside, even though I don't like to talk about it, he is a USA Cycling mountain bike pro, so pretty impressive resume. He's riding for Evoke Bike, sponsored by Insured. You can see all his power numbers down there. Pretty impressive numbers. 17.29, 15-second sprint. That's nothing to laugh about. Hopping right into Adam's race. It's on the Magnificent 8. And why don't, Adam, you take us through this course?
Yeah, straightforward course until the finish. The finish is obviously the most important part that will go really into specifics. But aside from that, it's just a mainly flat course with a little bit of rise here and there throughout. When I mean rise is, 10, 20, 30-second little bumps in the road. But aside from that, a race like this where you're actually finishing on a hill is all about conservation. Conserve, conserve, conserve. Sit in the pack. Do not go in breaks. Do not chase breaks until the finish, until the last 5K. I'm nowhere near the front. And if I am, it's by mistake or only because my team needs my help up there.
So the first thing we're going to cover is the start. We're starting here at the orange arrow. It does start up a little rise, which is kind of interesting, and we're going to go all the way up to this turn. Always good to see the starts with the pros and what they're doing. So let's get into the clip. All right, Adam, why don't you walk us through the start here?
Sure. So I've already been pretty warmed up. Usually in a big field like this, I'm just getting warmed up in the actual pens. I'm not usually riding around just because I like to see who's coming up, who's in the pens with me. This is a pretty stacked field that you're looking at. Tons of top 5 teams and top 5 riders, top 10 riders on Zwift Power. Right now, as you can see, I'm already in 66th place, but I'm not freaking out. Heart rate is going to consistently go up, especially as we go through Latopia and we hit that rise there. This first little rise until we go into the volcano. But I'm really just chilling. I'm sorting out my legs. I'm looking at the field. I'm not worried about who's attacking off the front. That's the last thing on my mind right now. Personally, I have some little quirks that I do to help me get settled. I like to come and sit at the back in the beginning, just to look at the field and see what's going on. But you have to remember, this is a stacked field in an A+ race. And 98% of them know that nobody's going to get away in the first couple of kilometers. So there isn't any reason to really tail gun it super hard to the front. But as you can see on this small rise, what I'm doing is I'm keeping my power steady. I'm riding, close to 5 watts per kilo, and I'm slowly making my way up to the front. If I was to just throw in a huge surge right here, my heart rate would spike. I would have burnt a match, and it wouldn't have done anything because we're still in that first couple of K. So right now, I'm moving up gradually. I'm looking at who's around me. Nobody's doing anything crazy. Maybe there's one guy off the front, like a flyer, thinking he's going to do something special. But aside from the most part, you can see how grouped up we are right now. And the reason for that is that we're all just chilling. We know what's coming later on. 22 miles from now is a hill climb finish. So there really isn't a reason to burn so many matches. Yeah, and another thing that I'm looking at too is that the only thing you have to worry about in these A+ races is when they're really fast from the beginning, and you'll know right away. You're like, whoa, I'm doing 8 watts per kilo for the first minute. Is the split in the field, because usually you'll get 100 riders and 80 of them know what they're doing, and there's always that 20 towards the back who don't. So while I said I like to normally ride towards the back and make my way up slow, if I feel like it's a really fast start, which that wasn't, then I would move up a lot quicker, just to make sure if there was a split in the field that I wasn't having to push too hard from the back just to catch them.
Are there people you're looking for specifically who you kind of know their tactics, like a Messineo or somebody who has huge watt per kg, who you're like, if that dude went off the front at the start, you're worried about, or is it just like you're not nervous at all?
On this specific course, I'm not worried at all. I'm not even looking at names in terms of what I'm going to do until the finish. So I might glance over every now and then just to see what my placing is. And if I catch a name that I know, I'll kind of put that in my reserve bank in my mind, saying, okay, I have to look out for him later. But there's 23-mile race, and 22 of it is pretty much flat. So I'm going to see almost everybody who's in my race if I hadn't researched it before. And what I'm doing is I'm running over different scenarios in my head as I'm trying to relax, and that really helps take away from the gameplay, because you got to understand is that we're playing a video game, but you're still on your bike, and you need to be calculating and thinking about your tactics constantly as you're maneuvering your avatar through this group. So number one, you're riding a bicycle. Number two, your heart rate is really high. And number three, you have to figure out, how you're going to manage the next 22 miles to get to the finish and climb. So the biggest thing you can do is just get a good playlist, try to relax in the field, and work out different scenarios in your head based on how the finish is going to be.
So next up, what we have, this is one of my personal things here that I'm most worried about. I called it a baby super tuck. Super tucking down here, down the volcano. I like to think of myself as trying to be the most lazy Zwifter in the world. So, Adam, talk us through this baby super tuck. When you stop pedaling, when you keep pedaling, what you're worried about.
Sure. So we got a little bit of a downhill right now. If it's that early on, sometimes what I'll do is I'll just stop pedaling, let myself super tuck. See how I shook my legs out there? Why don't you go back another second so we can show everybody? Boom, right there. See, shaking the legs out, just making sure everything's loose. Do a little bit of a super tuck. Now this goes straight into a flat. This is like a 10-second downhill. So right away, I'm gonna start pedaling before the flat, just so my trainer and the power kicks up and knows that I want to pedal right now instead of going into the super tuck. If you do the super tuck too long in a fast field like this, you're just gonna get spit to the back right away. So you did a quick super tuck, back up, shook the legs out, and then back in the field, start pedaling again.
So next up, we have this on clip on pack positioning. Very, very flat segment. Not a ton of tactics here, but one of the things I feel like the pros do better than everybody else is drafting. So Adam, if you wouldn't mind walking us through this one, what you're thinking, how you're drafting, what you're looking at on in-game.
There's always this type of flow in these bigger races, and you can tell that through the desert, it's just pan flat. I mean, there's almost no rises. So I'm just chilling during the back, getting out of the saddle a little bit, surveying who's left, because now we're down to a group of 38. As you can see, there's 20-second gap to everyone behind us. So I'm just chilling out, making I wipe my face with some sweat and things like that. But I'm really trying to just bring that heart rate down, because right now I'm at 150, which is like tempo for me. So it's really important that I just kind of spin. Maybe I'll take a sip of water. Sometimes I look around to make sure my mouse is clicked right. Just to make sure I'm in game and everything's cool, because this is kind of a time where you just need to settle back and just chill. So in regards to pack positioning, A and A plus riders do definitely do a better job with that. As you can see, it's so calm right now. I'm doing 2.7 watts per kilo. And it's a part where everybody's just kind of blobbed together. You might see one or two guys go crazy off the front, but for the most part, if the field isn't doing anything, that's kind of a signal to just rest and relax. One other thing about pack positioning, especially on the flats, is that you don't want to ride hard, but you don't want to ride too easy. You can still soft pedal in the group and float around in a way, depending on how the avatars are. And this isn't in any group. If it's a chill section, like on a desert flats where everybody's just kind of relaxing and waiting for the next rise to happen, pedal softly, but you don't have to always feel like I gotta be up there. I gotta be up there. I feel like there's this constant stress with a lot of other riders that I watch on their streams, where they're always just keeping the power a little bit higher just to stay in that top 10 or 15. And you don't always need to do that. If there's a massive surge in the group, you're going to see the orange numbers and you can start to ramp it up there. But if it's really, really chill and relaxed, like it is during the desert flats, you can still soft pedal, watch your avatar float back a little, and then maybe add a little bit of power here and there, but never overdoing it and never spiking it.
Next up, we have the Desert to Sequoia Hill. At least that's what I named it. Just that little rise coming out of the desert, trying to figure out what to do there. Again, this is a place where, at least in some of the lower category races, I've personally seen some breaks, but, I don't know how they play out in higher category races, or, if we think that, it's even a thing to be worried about a little break out of there. All right, so this is a clip where I saw Adam going up a hill, hop on his phone. I feel like he was just intentionally trying to make me feel bad here. So maybe if you could talk more about that, Adam.
Okay, number one, first, if there was anything significant, I wouldn't have been looking at my phone. Number two, I actually did a bad job. I made a tactical mistake here where I was on my phone, but I still wasn't pedaling enough. And now you can see me off the back, right? So I put in a little bit of an orange surge and right away, boom, I'm back in the field. Even on this slight rise, we're at 3%, right? But I'm not worried. I'm not going all out. My heart rate's not at 180. Sure, it's going to shoot up a little because I'm now riding, above threshold, right? And now the field is getting a little strung out, so I'm going to keep pushing and keep pushing. But as we know, when your significant other texts you and you got to respond, and you only have a certain amount of time before you get another nasty text back, you're gonna respond as soon as possible. So sometimes you have to burn a match for that, and that's what happened there. But as you can see, I'm right back in the pack. My heart rate has definitely gone up, 174, and it'll continue to increase because we still have a rise here before we go back downhill, right? this selection has been made. This is the main selection to the end. Okay, we got 9 miles left, 38 riders. These guys are strong. So first, I'm not really worried about 1 or 2 people getting off the front there. Second, you know, if I was really that far off the back, I know I could burn one match, really, really bad match, and get into the middle of the group like I did. But you know, for the most part, I'm not too worried about a break going because that's not a significant rise. And still, you're 8 or 9 miles away from the finish. Why would you want to burn it there and hope and pray that you can still have enough left for the finishing climb? Now, if it was on the flats, a finishing flat 8 miles away, I would be a little bit more awake and aware of what's going on near the front, because if 5 to 10 guys get away, that could be a significant problem if you're sitting too far back. That's something that you definitely want to watch if it's a flat finish. But with a hill climb finish, I don't have a care in the world, honestly.
All right, up next, a really interesting segment, the Watopia KOM and the finish here. Adam will walk us through this. This is one of those where, you know, Adam, when we were first talking about this race, Adam brought up that he thought he made a tactical error at the end, and so I'm really interested to hear from his perspective what happened. So Adam, why don't you go ahead and talk us through?
All right, so now we're in the last 1.6 miles of this race, and this is all for the money. You've got to be 100% focused on what's going on. This course finishes on the reverse KOM. It's a really, really short, steep spike, and then it drops down a little bit, and then it's a consistent drafting flat, constant rise from a flat to an all the way to the top. So you need to get over this kicker really, really good. I always push it on this kicker, even if I burn a little bit more, to make sure I'm in a good position, because you do not want to be tail gunning from the back on a steep climb. As you can see, we're at 5% now, and I'm already in the top 10. And I'll continue to be in that top 15, top 20 range. I do not want to fall back any more than that. Orange numbers are spiking. We know that it's a really, really short little hill here. You have to go hard here. And you have to be near the front, because right after this little hill here, it drops down. And if you're not drafting off of the main group, you're going to get spit out of the back, or you're going to be doing a much harder effort than you need to. So I push a little hard here. My heart rate is spiked a little bit, but I know that the rest of this climb is going to be a little wavy, up and down, up and down. Right here, I'm not chasing this guy. I'm gonna get off the gas in 2 seconds. You know, we're only doing 5.2 now, which is really not that hard. He's still pushing at 7 watts per kilo. But now that I've gotten over that little bit of spike, I'm relaxed, I'm calming down. Okay, so now I'm letting the pack swarm me. I'm trying to bring my heart rate down, but you have to remain focused. There's 1 mile left in this, so you never know what's going to go. If people go early, you have to be ready to react to that. I'm in 24th place. My position is fine right now. I don't need to be in that top 5. This finish, like, look, I'm only doing 3%, and my speed is really high still, 23 miles an hour, 22 miles an hour. You can get plenty of a good draft in the middle of this group. You don't have to worry about it. About being in that top 5, because it's not a flat sprint finish. You want to make sure that you get it right. And how you get it right is by being on the right wheels at the right time. And right now is not the right time. Right now, you need to just be conserving a little bit. So as you can see, I'm still pedaling hard. My heart rate's still in that 170s, but it came down from 178. We go over a little bit of a curve here, and it's going to rise back up. But at the same time, everybody's kind of riding in that 6 to 7 watts per kilo range, which is actually pretty relatively easy when you consider how hard it's going to get in this last half mile. All right, last half mile, you have to be in the top 15. I'm going to be working my way up in just a second here, just to see who's going to attack first. In an AA plus race, there's always going to be somebody going early that doesn't have a really good pop, especially on a finishing climb like this, where the speeds are high. We're doing almost 30 miles an hour right now, and we're going to be doing over 40 in the sprint finish. I'm in 9th place right now. Perfect position for me. I'm looking good. I'm feeling good. My heart rate actually isn't that high, 180. I've still got about 10 beats left before I max out. My tactical error was coming up, and if everybody looks at it right here, my teammate Brian Hodges, I'm on his wheel. My other teammate off to the right is going to start to surge right now. He surges, and then all of a sudden, my other teammate Hodges does a short little spike, which puts him into the top 5. That's where I made my mistake. I didn't surge quick enough, and that put me in 13th place, where he was in 5th or 6th when he started his sprint. When it's a fast uphill sprint like this, your position means so much, because you're doing 40 miles an hour to the sprint finish. I was in 17th place when I had to start my sprint. Hodges was in about 5th or 6th, and that's why he got 3rd, and that's why I got 6th place at the end. I still had good legs to get into the top 10, but it wasn't enough to get onto the podium. And as you can see in the results, yeah, I was 6th place, and that was because of that small 1-second tactical error in the last 0.5 of the race that cost it. And that's how specific it gets in these AA plus races, because everybody's so close.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, that's one of those things, you had told me you made a tactical error, and I went through and I looked, and I was just like, oh, look, you did great to me. So, that's one of those things, I think, especially that I overlooked. I know.
Yeah, sometimes you get it right, sometimes you don't. But, you only get a split second to make a decision whether to go early or not. And it might have been a confidence issue. Maybe I didn't think I needed to surge there. But Hodges, my teammate, was just on top of it. As soon as he saw a surge from our other teammate, he did a small little spike, shoot up into the orange, and then his power drops down just a little bit before he's going to start his sprint. But the thing is he started his sprint in that top 5, where I started my sprint in like 13th, 15th place or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got so much more ground to make up. And when you're doing 40 miles an hour, even on a finishing hill, you're just not going to make up that much real estate.
So, we see your teammate out front there, and you're in 14th place, just like you said. So what you're saying is right now you need to make your jump, and you did.
Exactly. My initial jump, right?
Yeah.
There's a difference between making my jump. If I would have started my sprint now, all out, it would have been too early. And I probably would have faded in that last 50 meters. But what I didn't do is I didn't put it in a little tiny bit of a surge to get me into that top 5 or 6, and then really unload and start my actual full sprint.
Okay. Yeah, that's
So is this a case where if you backed up 0.2 miles, would you rather be up closer to the front earlier, or would you rather have made that little small jump earlier?
Kind of both. I should have been in the top 10. That was my first mistake. From the beginning, not from the beginning, but for 0.5, I should have been in the top 10, which is getting me ready for the surge that my teammate did.
Yeah.
And that put him into 5th place. And then he sat there for just a second or two, looked around. Okay, let's light it up. And then he went. And I missed that window. And what that did is that because I didn't surge, a few other people saw that surge. They got onto that little jump. I didn't. And then when I started my sprint, I was too far back. And these are just the small tactical errors that you can make within a race at the highest level right now in game. The only difference I would say is in a B or C race, you're probably not going to have too many guys that grouped up on this specific course at the finish. So it's okay to put yourself into the top 5 a little bit earlier. So if I was in a B race with that same finish, I would have put myself into the top 5 a lot earlier. But when you have such a group of so many stacked riders in this A and A plus, you can be a little bit farther back and say 10th place and still make it up enough. Whereas there probably aren't too many guys who are going to finish that close together in a lower category race. So you want to put yourself a little bit more towards the front at the end.
All right, so our 3 key takeaways. Be attentive at the start, but don't go too hard. A lot of people in Zwift races think you have to start out going 700 watts and get at the start. You have to go hard, but just be attentive. Don't burn any matches at the start. Get in that top 15 near the end and be ready to jump at any moment. Again, Adam explained it really well, but you kind of saw a tactical error even some of the best Zwifters in game make, where if they get out of that top 15, they can't make it up either. And number 3, when you're riding on the flats, just relax and think about the different scenarios that are going to play out. Whether you're looking at the people around you and thinking what's going to happen in the rest of this race. Were there any more takeaways?
Well, Rick, one of them that I wrote down was that it's perfectly okay to burn a match as long as you're responding to a text from your wife.
Yeah, that should have been
Very
number
nice.
4. That should have been the 4th takeaway. So, thanks, Dave.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, so just to wrap up, is there any other thoughts either you have?
Yeah, I'll just conclude, I guess, for everybody watching out there. If you're a B or C rider and you're looking to get better, just know the courses, go through them in your head, work the different scenarios out while you're racing, relax, and then really study the finishes and have a plan of what you want to do, but make sure there's a, an A, B, C, and D plan, and you have to be able to execute all of them when needed. You need to be able to run through them. It's not just, okay, I'm going to go really hard and then sprint. It's not about that. This game is way too tactical for that. You need to look at the different points in the race, how hard people are going, and then have the confidence at that point, at that moment, to really dig in deep and push really hard. And if you do that, you'll constantly move up in this game.
Yeah, I think that should have been like the overall key takeaway. You see so many people saying Zwift is just a watt per kilogram game. And man, once you get into it, and once you see, like we did today, and it's not. It's a tactical game where it certainly helps to have high watts per kilogram, but if you don't have the tactics, you aren't going to finish first.
Yeah. Well, I say, for me personally, Rick, I appreciate you having me do this as your amateur rider here. I know I've learned a ton just in these 2 sessions here. As I mentioned before, I think since we last met Adam, I think I've dropped my race ranking a little over 20 points since that time. So, I mean, it's just been like, I guess I've been an experienced rider, I've done well over 100, but I mean, I'm now learning things that I've never really knew existed as part of this whole like cycling game. So I think even me, I'm pretty humbled to know just how technical it is and just how sophisticated this can be. I think it's even given me a greater appreciation for this too.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm stoked, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thanks both of you guys. I really appreciate you both coming on.
Thanks.
All right, thanks, Rick. Thanks, Adam.
All right. See ya. Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Special thanks to Dave and Adam for joining me today. I learned a lot about how to be a faster Zwifter, and I hope you did too. If you liked this video, please click like below, and please subscribe to the channel. We're going to be putting out a lot of new content over these winter Zwifting months, and I want you to be a faster racer.